All right, Trump hints that the Iran war is about over. Let's check it out. All right, welcome to Rob Schmitt Tonight. About 30 minutes ago, the president wrapping up that news conference from Miami. It's been a very interesting day as far as the war in Iran. The president gave indications to many different reporters and outlets today that this war in Iran could end really at any time and could come to an end here very, very soon. So we were all very eager to hear what he had to say tonight. Take a listen to this question and answer from a reporter.
Mr. President, you've said the war is, quote, very complete, but your defense secretary says this is just the beginning. So which is it, and how long should Americans be prepared?
Well, I think you could say it both. The beginning, it's the beginning of building a new country, but they have no Navy, they have no Air Force, they have no anti-aircraft equipment. It's all been blown up. They have no radar, they have no telecommunications, and they have no leadership. It's all gone. So, you know, you could look at that statement. We could call it a tremendous success right now as we leave here. I could call it, or we could go further, and we're going to go further. But the big risk on that war has been over for 3 days.
The big risk of the war has been over for 3 days. He talked about how the missiles are about gone. Their drones seem to be about gone. They're not firing off very much. They're just kind of hunkered down. There was a lot of interesting stuff from this news conference. Trump was asked again about the decision to strike by our own Mike Carter, giving much more detail and nuance to how he made the choice, a choice that's now been so heavily criticized by many in his base. Here's the president on how he decided to go into Iran. Take a look.
I felt, based on the negotiations that were being had by Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner and Marco and Pete and everybody was involved, I felt that they were looking to tap us along before they hit, and I thought they were going to hit. And if they hit us first, that would have been a very bad thing.
Felt that obviously we were being delayed, doing what they always do, and then potentially that they were looking to make a move at some point during those delays is how he responded to that. Trump today told the CBS White House reporter that he believes the war is very complete pretty much. And that's kind of how this narrative took off, that this thing could be coming to a close here pretty soon, restating that Iran has no Navy, no communications, no Air Force, also saying that he's thinking about taking over the Strait of Hormuz, which, of course, is that narrow waterway that tankers use to get oil and natural gas out of the energy-abundant Persian Gulf just to the west of there and getting it out into the open ocean. Trump maybe wants to take that over. He says one ship's already gone through and was completely unharassed by the Iranians, saying that Iran has shot everything that they have to shoot and better not try to get cute, or better not be trying anything cute as well. So that's kind of where we are. We watched oil skyrocket overnight to like $120 a barrel, and then it just plunged right back through the floor. It's now in the 80s, which isn't even that much elevated from where it was before this whole thing started. But obviously the price of oil is a vulnerability for them. The president also saying that drone attacks, as I just said, are plummeting, which CENTCOM reported actually last week. We heard that drone attacks were down something like 83%. Ballistic missile attacks were down, something like 90%. Trump saying the facilities where these drones, these kamikaze one-way drones, the most effective weapon that Iran has, the facilities where they're being built in Iran was actually being hit as he was speaking during the news conference.
To probably 25%, and they'll soon be down to nothing. We'll have where they manufactured the drones are under fire as we speak. They're being hit.
As we speak, they're being hit. So this is developing very quickly. It's everything he says right now is very interesting and can change a lot of things. And today was one of those days, absolutely. The president was also asked multiple times about the Ayatollah's second son, the now dead Ayatollah's second son, who's now been named the new Ayatollah, the new supreme leader of Iran. Trump refusing to say that he wants to take this new Ayatollah out, but reporting from the Wall Street Journal suggests that Trump has told aides he would back the killing of the new supreme leader if he proves unwilling to cede to U.S. demands, such as ending Iran's nuclear development and that's according to current and former U.S. officials. Now, this is a guy who's had his entire family wiped out. He's a hardline psychopath. He's been one of the visionaries of all of the atrocities they've committed against the innocent people of his country. Not much indication that this new Ayatollah is going to be any different than the old one. Here was the president on Air Force One. Take a listen.
You said you want to be involved in the selection of the next leader of Iran. Can you talk to me?
Well, because I don't want to just come back every 10 years, and mostly you'll have presidents, mostly, that won't do that because they don't get it. But we don't want to come back every 5 years or every 10 years and do this. So we want to pick a president that's not going to be leading their country into a war.
So that's where this gets confusing, right? Because he's, on one hand, he's saying that, you know, this is about over. We're about done there. On the other hand, you do have a decimated country. They can't really do anything right now. But if the regime is still somewhat intact, or the pieces of it are still there, and the people haven't taken it over and pushed the regime out, if the regime is still there and the Ayatollah is the son of the last Ayatollah, it's just like a cancer. You can beat that thing down, but if there's any of it left, as soon as you walk away, it's going to start growing and spreading all over again. It's just like last summer. We took out the nuclear facilities and we hit them hard. But what was it, 6 months later? We had to go back in because they start rebuilding it. I mean, it's a big country. They got 90 million people and they have the ability to pull in some serious revenue. They can start rebuilding something like this rather quickly. So how are you going to end the war if the Ayatollah is the Ayatollah and if the regime is still there? That's where this gets tricky, and that's where the conversation is going to go tonight. Hegseth on 60 Minutes last night asked a very interesting question. How do we know if this war is won when you have a regime that's never going to surrender?
What does that look like? Unconditional surrender? How will you know it's real?
It means we're fighting to win. It means we set the terms. We'll know when they're not capable of fighting. There'll be a point where they'll have no choice but to do that. Whether they know it or not, they will be combat ineffective. They will surrender. Whether they want to admit it or not, whether their pride lets them say it out loud or not, it's President Trump who will set the terms of that.
Okay. So this is interesting. KT McFarland was Trump's deputy national security advisor, one of the best people to talk to in moments like this. And KT, it's good to see you again. This is where I'm confused. I mean, obviously, they want to put messaging out there that says that we're close on this because I think the economy wants us to be close on this and oil prices want us to be close on this. But at the same time, you got an Ayatollah and you have a regime that's still, it's cowering, but it's still intact.
You know, you've got to assume that with the extraordinary intelligence that the Israelis have had heretofore, with everything doing with Iran, right? All the leadership, where are they? What are their capabilities? Who's who? That we know, we and the Israelis have identified who in the current regime or in the current, let's say, leadership structure is somebody we could work with, as we could work with a vice president of Venezuela after Maduro was gone. So have we identified some of those people? Interestingly, some of them have not been targeted. They could have been targeted, but some of them have remained alive, have they remained, you know, unattacked. And so are there those individuals? The other thing is that when President Trump's talking about this, he's just saying, we're now mopping up. I mean, they're very, once you get down to the target list and you've gotten rid of, you know, the Air Force, you've gotten rid of the missile launchers, you've gotten rid of the Navy, you've gotten rid of the senior leadership, you're now just going after other secondary and tertiary targets. So the military part of it is winding down. Now is the hard part. Who can they identify? And one thing President Trump has said, going all the way back to the Vietnam War, we should not be picking winners and losers here. It's up to the people of the country to have their own regime change. With the caveat, though, that, as he said, it's got to be somebody that we can work with and somebody we approve.
But it seems like the regime is still intact enough that the clerics have obviously chosen this new leader that's probably going to be worse than his father because he's younger and his whole family was just decimated. How do you, I mean, you can't leave it like this. Do we agree there that you can't leave it right here?
No, you can't leave it here because, you know, here's the thing that history has taught us. President Bush went in, and as President Trump referred to, he got rid of everybody. He got rid of all the political leadership, the military leadership, the government leadership, and then we became an occupying army. That was a mistake. It didn't work. But President Obama, he toppled dictators during the Arab Spring and then walked away, assuming everything would be just fine. President Trump has found this middle way where he can eliminate their war-making capabilities in the case of Iran, and then he can find somebody with an existing regime, and maybe from the opposition leadership, that he can work with, that would work with us and take our direction. That's what they're looking for now, and maybe it's not going to be the current Ayatollah. Well, Oh, yeah, of course it's going to be possible. Look, there's nothing left to Iran. The Iranians are smart people, and they're practical people. They invented the game of chess, and they're really good at it. They're looking around to say, okay, we don't have anything left of a military. Let's just quit while we have an economy left. We haven't destroyed all of their oil-making capabilities, their energy capabilities. So I've got to assume that President Trump, who thinks about the downside risk of all. I've been in the Situation Room. He always asks, what could go wrong? What could go right, but what could go wrong? What are you not thinking about that could go wrong? I'm assuming that we have a very detailed plan. I've heard from people in the administration. They know exactly how this should be governed, and they are already in contact with and working with people who might be able to step forward.
KT, we got to leave it there. We appreciate you coming on. As we look at live pictures here, that's the vice president on his way to the dignified transfer for the 7th U.S. soldier that has been killed in this conflict in Iran over the past 9 days. KT, thank you. We appreciate it. And that's the vice president about to take off for that. We want to bring in now Jack Carr, former Navy SEAL who spent 20 years in special warfare, most of that in the Middle East. He's an expert on this stuff. He's also the author of a book called The Fourth Option. And Jack, thank you for coming on. Let's start where we just left off with KT. You know, they want to obviously declare victory. They want to make this a quick thing because that's obviously what everybody wants. But with the regime still looking the way it is and the Ayatollah who it is, what do you make of how do you assess the situation?
Well, a few things. I just watched the president's news conference there and took a couple notes. 51 ships, very significant. Drones, missiles. I'm sure we're learning a ton about drones. We're testing out some new countermeasures against them that are going to go in our playbooks for future planning and future wars. He said something very interesting about not striking Iranians' like energy grid. He specifically said electricity, and that tells me that this is not like us going to war with Germany or Japan in World War II. This is specifically against those regime elements and not the people. I thought that was significant. But it was a big news day today, of course. Now we have this new supreme leader who's stepped up, or everyone else stepped back. And I only say that kind of tongue in cheek because we've gotten so good at manhunting. That was one of the main things that we took away from the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan and a couple other hot spots around the world is our special operations forces in particular got very good at manhunting. So if the president does not want the new supreme leader around much longer, he probably will not be. And then you mentioned something earlier about vengeance, you said, and when it comes to terrorism. And this isn't specific, of course, to Iran, but I think when you mentioned that earlier, I thought about Libya, and I thought about our 2 service members who were killed in Berlin in 1986. We then bombed Libya, also in 1986, and then 2 years later, we have Pan 103 and 270 people killed in that. And I was taking it back to Iran when we talk about memories and we talk about vengeance and we talk about terrorism. Salman Rushdie, of course, was the author who wrote the Satanic Verses back in 1988. The then Supreme Leader issued a fatwa against him. And then almost 30 years later, in August of 2022, he's attacked in New York, not in New York City, outside of that. And he's stabbed in the face, in the neck, in the abdomen. And that was 30 years later. So they have some long memories over there.
Yeah, they do. And just to wrap it here, because I don't have a lot of time left, but as far as this moment, what do you think needs to happen between now and when they do say we're done in here? Because I feel like right now, if they walk away, it's going to feel like it's not going to be a loss, but it's going to be an unfinished job.
Sure, we've done that over and over again in multiple countries across the Middle East over my lifetime even. But that air campaign will continue. Selective use of special operations, most likely Israel and the United States, whether that's going into nuke sites to destroy them from the inside, securing gas and oil platforms or oil refineries, continued destruction of the Navy, and then also operations that are designed to deny Iran the ability to mine the Strait of Hormuz. I haven't heard too many people talking about that, but I'm sure that is something that is at the forefront of our military planners' minds, and putting special operations forces against those capabilities are probably top of list also. And then
is there any
Hezbollah in Lebanon?
Yeah, 10 seconds. Is there any way to get this regime out of there? Is there any way to end this with a different regime in place so that this doesn't become the thing that he just said today? He wants to pick the leader. He doesn't want to come back every 5 years.
And that language has changed a little bit. The first time he addressed us, he said we want the people to rise up. And if we go back once again to the 80s and before that in the Soviet bloc, there were protests, and those protests were quelled with the use of machine gun fire. It was only after the new leadership got to the Kremlin and pushed down to the Soviet bloc, hey, we're not going to do that anymore, that those protests could be effective. So it's really getting a new leader in there who's not going to kill all these protesters and who will come into the U.S. camp, or finding that person who will do that.
Boy, this is such complicated stuff. Jack Carr, we appreciate you coming on. Thank you.
Thank you.
An incredible image from New York over the weekend. There's a white liberal demanding we welcome Islam on the bottom of that picture as an ISIS-inspired terrorist throws a bomb right over his head. We've got that up next. And then later in news from the left, Jewish actor Ben Stiller very angry that we're bombing a country that wants to kill him.
The 47th President of the United States of America.
And, you know, I wouldn't say Fox has been exactly perfect. Fox has been a big difference of Fox between now and what it was 4 years ago, as you know. But we have others that come along, and they're doing well, and Newsmax has been really good, and, you know, others are coming along. And people are seeing that they're watching these conservative networks.
President Trump is right. That's why millions of Americans are tuning into Newsmax for the real news they can trust.
The grind catches up with everyone, even me. That's why I trust Cunol Ultra High Absorption Turmeric to support my joint health. It's the #1 doctor-recommended form of turmeric. It helps you keep doing the things you love at every age. Cunol, the brand I trust.
As the leader of the Coalition for Student Wellbeing, I believe students must be at the table when discussing youth mental health. Alongside their parents, kids are navigating a challenging world during formative years in their lives. Major life changes, academic pressures, and financial challenges can feel overwhelming. The type of stress can look really different for each student. That's why we need a thoughtful, comprehensive solution informed by young people. Get involved today at empowerourfuturecoalition.com.
What's gold is new again. Pardon the pun. But considering gold has been used as currency since around 550 BC, it has been on fire the past year. I'm here with Daniel Boston, the founder of Preserve Gold. Why is gold so stable and such a good investment for many people?
Take the central bank, for example, the Federal Reserve. They print money out of thin air, and then they take that printed money to go buy hard assets like gold to protect themselves against the very risks that they're creating. So I always tell people, don't do what the big players are telling you to do. Do what they're doing themselves.
Yeah, watch what they're doing.
That's correct.
Okay. If people are interested in investing with Preserve Gold, how do they get started?
Text Newsmax to 50505 to get your free information and up to $15,000 in free gold and silver with a qualified purchase. That's right. Text Newsmax to 50505.
All right. No way you can miss it.
Homeowners ask me all the time, do gutter guards really work?
Leaf Filter certainly does. In our testing, Leaf Filter handled double the rain of common hood-style guards.
It's Homes approved.
Call 877-77-HOMES or visit leaffilter.com/homes.
This is keratin debris, where nail fungus grows. Nonix Nail Gel cleans out fungus by removing keratin debris. Using Nonix, 90% of nails improve. Get clinically proven results. So effective, it's money-back guaranteed.
Healthy aging support starts here with the innovative nitric oxide science pioneered by Human, supporting your body from the heart out through circulation, blood flow, blood pressure, and energy. Results you can feel, science you can trust. Get started today at human.com.
We were born and raised in New York, and we want everyone here to stay in New York. You don't get to come from outside and then tell everyone else.
You know, it's not often you see something as poetic as this, but that's quite a moment there, capturing suicidal empathy, captured in this picture. From New York this past weekend, a liberal white guy screaming that we need to welcome Islam. And as he does so, an ISIS-inspired radical Islamist from another country screaming Allahu Akbar throws a bomb right over his head. Ain't that something? 18-year-old Amir Balat was the bomber right there in the picture. He, along with 19-year-old Ibrahim Qayyumi, arrested, federally charged, hurling 2 explosive devices right outside the mayor's residence at an anti-Islam protest. So they were counter-protesters to an anti-Islam protest. Packing the explosives with nails and an explosive TATP nicknamed Mother of Satan, which has been used in many terror attacks. Luckily, these bombs were duds. They were real, but they were duds. A universal salute for ISIS was captured during the perp walk of one of the young men. They're both from the Middle East, Turkey and Afghanistan, both raised quite well. Qayumi lives with a family in a $2 million home in Pennsylvania. So we pull people out of their countries, we bring them here, they create a life like this, and they raise kids that throw bombs at us. Try to understand that. One of the bombers, waving his Miranda rights, writing on a piece of paper, all praise due to Allah, Lord of all worlds. I pledge my allegiance to the Islamic State. Die in your rage, you non-believer. The pair were seeking a bigger bombing than that of the Boston Marathon. Here was the mayor talking about it.
This was a vile protest rooted in white supremacy entitled Stop the Islamic Takeover of New York City. I'm the first Muslim mayor of our city. Anti-Muslim bigotry is nothing new to me. While I found this protest appalling, I will not waver in my belief that it should be allowed to happen. Two men, Amir Balat and Ibrahim Qayumi, traveled from Pennsylvania and attempted to bring violence to New York City. They are suspected of coming here to commit an act of terrorism.
Give him points for talking about both sides, but he certainly started with being offended by anti-Islam protests. Scott LoBaido is a New York City-based artist and activist. Vicky Paladino, Republican on the New York City Council. Good to have you here. Scott, we had quite a moment this weekend, an anti-Islam protest. These guys show up, and then you see the life that they live. Isn't it something to see that? The house that he grew up in?
Yeah, look, I've been here 4 generations. I'm never going to have a house like that. Once again, this just proves the separation of what this is all about.
Yeah.
Look, Jake Lang, I don't agree with everything he does, but as an activist myself, we step over the line. We're provocative, but we're peaceful.
Yeah.
Am I happy that they brought this poor goat? I feel bad for the goat.
Right.
What does goat have nothing to do with anything? He's go. He's probably got a lot of stories to tell back on the farm. But the key is that there was no violence. And we get called Islamophobic. See, it's not about being, against Islam. It's about assimilation.
Yeah.
We had this conversation so many times. Yeah. Everybody's welcome here. I don't care what religion, gender, what ethnicity. You come here, you assimilate, and you do not push your country's agenda on this country.
Especially one that you fled.
From what you fled, the insanity you fled, and then to come here and you're allowed to protest once you become a citizen. Right away. That next day, you go out in the street. I worship that First Amendment. Yeah. But they become violent, and this was the perfect example. They could not handle our opposition of them not assimilating and trying to change the course of our country, and then they become violent.
Vicky,
terrorists.
That's exactly what they are. Vicky, go ahead.
Well, to add to this, these are 18-year-olds, like you brought up, raised in a privileged household. This is what we're supposed to consider as somewhat moderate, that they came to this country, they achieved the American dream, and they raised this. Now, how are we going to go with this? The mayor's reaction took about 48 hours for him to actually call it out for what it was. He was a long time coming, very delayed. We've got a real problem on our hands here. To Scott's point, I too believe in, freedom of speech, First Amendment. You got the right. This is not allowed. What you've got happening here, this is terrorism. Yeah. This is domestic terrorism. People could have been killed, maimed, and worse. The lucky thing, these things did not go off. So to the other side, they're calling them white supremacists. Right. I, too, don't know this guy they're talking about. However, there was only 20 of them compared to about 120 to 150 of the others. Yeah. Now, you could see how shocked that guy was with the mic before the animal came over him to throw the bomb. Right. And the New Yorkers, we've had it. This guy's only been in office since January 1. We're on, March 8th? That's 2 months and a week. What are we doing here? He needs to step up to the plate. He needs to condemn Islam. Right. He needs to condemn the terrorist attack and call them terrorists.
He will never condemn Islam because he is Islamic. And if I can just show you guys this about his wife, The Jewish Insider reporting an incredible revelation about the Islamists who currently occupy our mayor's mansion. Mamdani's wife, who's such a chic girl in this city right now, was liking posts that celebrated the October 7th attacks right at the time that October 7th happened. One of them showed stills of participants live streaming footage of the attack. Terrorists, participants is a euphemism for that. First of a bulldozer that the terrorists used to breach the barrier separating Israel from Gaza. The second of attackers riding on a captured IDF vehicle. I got about 15 seconds for each of you to respond to this, but that's the mayor of New York's wife was celebrating October 7th.
Look, I was here on your show before this election even started.
Right.
How many Jews voted for him?
Yeah.
You know the amount of Jews that voted for him and his wife, knowing who they were?
The majority, I would say.
Shame on them.
Yeah.
Shame on them.
Vicki, your thoughts?
Again, same thing. We did such an extensive dive into this guy while he was running for mayor. Everybody out there knew exactly the product they were buying, and they bought it in spite of it.
Yeah.
So now you see her there. You know, everybody says she's got her own right. My wife, I love her dearly. No, this country, this city cannot be, and this country cannot be governed by a sick ideology known as radical Islamic terrorism. And these people and this young kid said, and it's on the FBI tape when the FBI did him, he said, those, and you put it up, those who are not with me shall perish. Okay, this is a sick ideology. We cannot have this anymore.
The forest is burning. Let it burn
right,
so
Scott.
it rejuvenate itself. We tried, Vicki. You and I tried.
100%.
I'd love to hear the dinner conversations of the liberal Jews that voted Mamdani talking about this story. I'd love to hear how they talk about it.
Me
Vicki
too.
Paladino, Scott LoBaido, good to have you both here.
Thanks for having us on. Thank you very much. Good to see you.
Trump says he'll sign nothing else into law until he gets the SAVE Act and secure elections. That's up next.
Get new floors during Empire Today's gigantic 75% off sale. That's carpet, hardwood, tile, and vinyl. 75% off. Schedule now.
800-588-2300
Today.
He's bleeding. Okay. Go again.
Nearly 5,000 people die from choking each year. That's frightening. I'm Dr. Ben Carson.
And I'm Arthur Lee. Well, there are ways to help prevent choking. Accidents do happen. That's why I invented the Life Pack.
Anyone can use this device, and it can save a life in seconds.
Just place, push, and pull. It's that simple. Please order one for your home, office, car, anywhere you eat.
Go to lifehack.net or call 877-543-3822.
If your dog struggles with stiff joints, low energy, messy poops, or an itchy coat, the cause might be sitting in your dog's food bowl right now. Kibble. That's why we created Badlands Ranch Superfood Complete, gently air dried, packed with real canine superfoods to help your dog unlock puppy-like energy, smoother digestion, healthier joints, shinier coats, and more. Thousands have already made the switch. Visit your local pet food retailer today.
Hi, I'm Sally with SellMyPolicy.com, the fast concierge service here to help you sell your life insurance policy for cash now. Our experienced team makes it fast and easy for you to get your offer. Use the money however you want. Cover healthcare costs, pay off debt, or take the trip of a lifetime. Use the funds for supplemental retirement income, investments, or home improvements, or give money to loved ones now rather than later. John sold his policy for $590,000 in cash, which he used to pay for health care. And Cheryl sold her policy for $90,000 in cash and used it to supplement her retirement income. If you are over 65 with a life insurance policy of $100,000 of coverage up to $50 million of coverage, then you may qualify. With Sell My Policy, some people choose to sell all or just part of their policy so they can access cash now while also keeping coverage in place for their loved ones.
It's easy to find out what your policy could be worth today. Call 800-961-7355. That's 800-961-7355. Or visit sellmypolicy.com.
Why lapse or surrender your policy? Sell it and you can stop making premium payments. You may receive substantially more cash than what your insurance carrier will offer. Plus, you'll get paid fast. Arthur sold his policy for $84,000 in cash, which he used to help reduce his debt. SellMyPolicy.com has a large network of funders. That means more money in your pocket. If you or a loved one has a policy, call now. Trusted by seniors, there's no obligation to sell. Find out what your policy is worth today.
Talk with a policy expert now to see how much cash you could receive. Call 800-961-7355. That's 800-961-7355. Or visit sellmypolicy.com. Sellmypolicy.com.
Just in time for our country's big celebration, the Kids Guide to America's 250th birthday is here, and it's free. Give your kids this epic story of freedom, heroes, and fireworks. Get it at freeusagift.com. That's freeusagift.com.
The Save America Act. The Save America Act. And that's voter ID. We want voter ID. When a voter, we want to be able to see a picture of the voter. We want to be able to see that the voter is legitimate. We want, very importantly, confirmation that this voter is a citizen of the United States of America, and we want no mail-in ballot scams.
So demanding secure elections like the rest of the modern world, Trump vowing to not sign any other bills into law until the Senate passes the SAVE Act. Posting on Truth Social, it must be done immediately, saying he's not going to sign anything else until it's passed, and not the watered-down version. He wants to go for the gold, must show voter ID, proof of citizenship, no mail-in ballots except for military, illness, disability, travel. Also wants no men and women's sports, no transgender mutilation for kids either. He says do not fail. In a phone call with NBC, when asked if Congress will approve this bill, meaning really the Senate, and whether or not they're going to amend the filibuster, Trump said, I don't know, adding nobody is doing much on it, and until they do it, I'm not doing anything. So that's a pretty big line in the sand. Now, John Thune, the Senate Majority Leader, has said he supports the bill, but he's clearly terrified to force a talking filibuster to amend the filibuster to get it. So how much does he really support it? Democrats are terrified of a secure election, as we know. Chuck Schumer has been screaming Jim Crow 2.0 about every single day for the past month, including on Sunday. Here was the president's response to that.
Well, the capital of the Save America Act. And I saw Schumer yesterday. We will stop Save America. He's getting killed. I watched Schumer, who's horrible. What a horrible politician. He is now a Palestinian officially.
All right, Mark Meadows is the president's former chief of staff, has been working to get the SAVE Act passed. And, sir, it's good to have you back on the show. Good to see you. Where are we at with this bill tonight, and how confident are you that this thing can get pushed through? Because the president says, I'm not going to do anything else until it is.
Well, bravo for the president. Rob, great to join you, but the American people need to apply pressure to their senators. Here's what I'm sure of, is left to their own devices, the Senate is not going to move this bill, even though 85% of Americans know that the Save America Act is actually good for America and good for them and good for election integrity. But here's the key. Why we know that it's stalled right now is there's what they call a robust whip and a soft whip. A robust whip is not happening in the Senate, which means that the leader has to get behind it and says, we need 50 senators to come on board and do this standing filibuster. You don't have to change the rules. There's nothing that has to be changed. In spite of the leadership feeding to legacy media that that's the case, I can tell you that the House is very resolved in making sure that nothing passes their chamber until this gets dealt with, and certainly the president is on record as well.
Tell me exactly why Thune seems to be, the major reason why this is stalling. What is he so scared of in this moment?
Well, I think he's scared of the fact that there may be a few members in their chamber that says, listen, we don't want to put up this kind of fight. I've heard through a third source that they're saying, well, you can't win this. Well, let me just tell you, the American people want to see Republican senators fighting on the floor of the Senate for this. They're tired of going ahead and saying, we're going to forfeit this game before it ever gets played. And so the leader Thune needs to get behind it. I can tell you there's a lot of pressure on him to do that. There needs to be pressure on all 53 senators to go ahead and state their position. We're keeping a whip count of those that are in favor of it. We're nowhere near the 50 that we need right now, but I believe at the end of the day we'll get there.
Do you think that this is as big of a deal as the president says it is, as far as people voting illegally in elections? We've brought a lot of people into this country. We send out a lot of mail-in ballots at this point. How big of a problem is this?
Well, it's a huge problem, and honestly, even if it's not, you want to make sure that you've got U.S. citizens and people that are voting for themselves and not for somebody else. But I can tell you, the president is right on this, and he's right that nothing should get signed into law until this gets passed out of the Senate and sent for his signature.
And Schumer running around just screaming Jim Crow 2.0. They're so terrified of this. If they're that nervous, you know there's a reason.
Exactly, Rob. And if they're that nervous, if Senator Schumer is against it, that means that most of America is for it. Let's get it done.
Jim Crow 2.0. To have an election basically, essentially like most of the first world does, would be Jim Crow 2.0. I didn't know there was so much Jim Crow in Europe. That doesn't really track with the way they operate their countries. Mark Meadows, good to see you. Thanks so much.
Great to be with you, Rob. Take care.
All right, you too. Trying to figure out this war economy, so is everybody else. Oil skyrocketed overnight and then fell through the floor. We're going to talk about it next.
You know Rob Finnerty. He's smart, bold, and stands strong for your values. Rob is fighting for you. Watch Finnerty weeknights only on Newsmax.
Total Beets, America's best-selling Beets brand, is available at Walmart. Total Beets blood pressure support soft chews contain a key ingredient clinically shown to deliver 2 times better blood pressure support. Take control of your health. Head to Walmart and get Total Beets blood pressure support soft chews today. Need blood pressure support? Total Beets contain a patented key ingredient clinically shown to deliver 2 times better blood pressure support. That's why Total Beets is the #1 best-selling Beets brand in America. Take control of your health with Total Beets. Search Amazon now for Total Beets.
Hi there, I'm Dean Heskin, President and CEO of Swiss America. Most investors believe their IRA, 401k, and bank accounts are reliable and safe. But what if our economy becomes so dire that you're restricted from accessing your own money? The fact is that should your bank be in trouble for holding bad loans, the burden could fall on you to help bail them out. Even more concerning is that U.S. financial regulations allow banks to impose withdrawal limits on your hard-earned savings. But there's something you can do about it. Our team at Swiss America has a report called The Secret War on Cash. Learn how to protect yourself with assets that can remain outside the control of banks and other financial institutions. For over 40 years, Swiss America has been one of the most trusted metal firms in the country. So don't wait. Call or text the number on your screen today for financial peace of mind in these uncertain times.
To a hacker, your tax return isn't just paperwork, it's a gold mine. Your social security number and bank data are their biggest payday of the year. Old antivirus software can't keep up. You need PCmatic. Our default deny technology blocks every single threat that hasn't been pre-approved. If we don't know it, we block it. Secure your return right now. Buy PCmatic antivirus and we will give you PCmatic VPN for free. American-made security for homes, businesses, and government agencies. Visit PCmatic.com.
Your Florida life is calling, and we have the answer. Valencia in Florida by GL Homes. Premium 55-plus living in 5 prime Florida locations. Gorgeous new homes from the mid-300s to $2.5 million. World-class resort-style living 24/7. Huge clubhouses, on-site dining, pickleball, and more. Effortless, low-maintenance living. Valencia, your Florida life is calling. Experience more at valenciaflorida.com.
Kevin Sorbo here, and I have an important message to share. The government needs more money, your money. If you owe the IRS back taxes, they can garnish your wages and levy your bank accounts. They can even seize your retirement or take your home. Don't let the IRS target you. Call the professionals at Tax Network USA. Their tax lawyers and enrolled agents are experts in powerful programs that may even help you eliminate your tax debt.
Call for a free consultation or visit tnusa.com.
I wish I could just watch live sports at home for a great price.
Choose and customize your channel lineup, or pause and watch for free. Sling lets you do that. Base package required.
If they do anything, the price will be incalculable. It doesn't really affect us. We have so much oil. This was an excursion that a lot of people wouldn't have done. I knew oil prices would go up if I did this, and they've gone up probably less than I thought they'd go up. But I don't think anybody thought we were going to be this quickly successful.
So the president's saying today he's thinking about taking over the Strait of Hormuz as we deal with the price of oil. It was a wild 24 hours in the energy markets. Oil shot through the roof overnight and then kind of fell through the floor today. It's sitting in the mid-80s after the markets closed. It's crazy to see that price just, woo! Trump telling the New York Post earlier today, don't panic over surging oil prices, saying he has a plan for everything, while he also says the war is close to being over. From the Wall Street Journal, traffic through the Strait of Hormuz has ground to a virtual halt, unleashing the most severe energy crisis since the 1970s and threatening the global economy. That's about 20% of the world's oil is just kind of parked in the Persian Gulf, unable to escape through that strait because Iran is threatening to blow up the ships. Trump posted on Truth Social last night, short-term oil prices, which will drop rapidly when the destruction of the Iran nuclear threat is over, is a very small price to pay for USA and world safety and peace. Only fools would think differently. Two ladies that certainly aren't fools join us now. Trish Regan, host of the Trish Regan Show. Diana Furchtgott-Roth, Energy Policy Research Foundation fellow. Ladies, good to have you both here. Trish, how do you explain what we just saw with the price of oil and how rapidly it shot and fell?
I think everybody kind of figured out this is going to be over sooner rather than later. And they also came to their senses. They recognize that this is only 20% of the world's supply. We got tons of oil, like, you know, oil coming out of the wazoo here in the USA. Plus, we just got Venezuela, so that's more oil that's come online. And so they have to think about this logically, right, as traders. I want to point out, you know, Rob, you hadn't seen total bedlam in the overall stock market over the last several days. In fact, today was up. We've been very muted in terms of the reaction. Now, normally, if people thought this was going to be a disaster and the oil was going to go to 200 and was going to stay there, you would have seen that reflected in stock prices overall. But the sentiment was actually quite positive. So I think you were seeing kind of a different read. Yeah, there was a freak out in the oil markets, but overall the market's been pretty contained, pretty normal. And so finally today there was the freak out period and they suddenly realized, oh gee, you know, we might be stuck with a whole lot of oil trading at, you know, upwards of $100, and that won't be good when oil goes back to 60. And the way the president's talking, it could go even lower than 60. In other words, if we're successful in the Middle East, it's going to be the Strait, not the Strait of Hormuz, it'll be the Strait of America, right? And we will have a much bigger imprint over there, and that will be good news for oil prices.
Diana, do you agree with that assessment? And do you think the president is trying to kind of cool down economic anxiety with the way he's talking about this war quickly potentially being over?
Well, I think it certainly shows the importance of his energy dominance agenda. No one's talking about bringing more windmills or solar panels online. They're just talking about the importance of oil. And it shows what the right decision we made to go to Venezuela first. It also shows that those other countries that are not developing their reserves, like the UK, for example, has 10 years worth of natural gas in the Gainsborough Trough that their government will not let them develop. That could create 250,000 jobs. So in contrast to the UK, we are really doing a good job. Plus, as well as the oil we have here, there's 375 million barrels of sanctioned oil floating around on ships right now that we could unsanction, just as Scott Bessent has unsanctioned some oil to go to India. And there's a lot of oil out there, and the world runs on oil.
Real quick final question, I mean, to both of you, do you think it's going to be necessary for the president to secure the Strait of Hormuz? Is that, and to get those ships moving, or like, how do you think this ends here? Because right now oil prices are good, but anything can happen tomorrow. We'll go to you, Trish, first.
Secure it. Yeah, I mean, I think that's the goal here. He's going to secure it one way or another.
Yeah.
So eventually, this will all come back to levels that are even more impressive than we saw just a couple months ago. So I think you can expect that. You can plan on that. So yeah, there could be some volatility. It will kind of go with however the strikes are going, if that makes sense. So sure, buckle up. I don't think it's going to be catastrophic, though.
Diana, your final thought. Go ahead.
It's absolutely vital that the Strait of Hormuz be open to allow those oil flows, because we have oil and natural gas here in the United States. Other countries don't. They need that Strait of Hormuz. And I'm sure if the president puts his mind and his warships to it, it can be open.
Ladies, thanks so much. Trish Regan, Diana Furchtgott-Roth. Good to see you both.
It's great to be with you.
Imagine hating the president more than a regime that wants to kill you. Next in News from the Left.
I'm Elmer Heinrich, owner of the company that sells an incredible nutritional supplement called Amino 150. I'm celebrating my 92nd birthday in excellent health and condition because I've been consuming 70 minerals and 80 other nutrients found in Amino 150. I don't have arthritis, diabetes, heart problems, dementia, or anything else. My blood pressure averages 119/72. My PSA is 0.00. I can still run, jump, and climb a ladder, dance for hours, or do anything else I want to do. Now, if you want to live a ripe old age and still have all of your marbles and muscles, you should try Amino 150. Regardless of your age, chances are you're not in excellent health because you lack many minerals in your diet. Now, don't hesitate any longer. Try Amino 150 so you can surprise your doctor the next time you get a physical. This incredible food supplement may be the best supplement in the world. Thank you and God bless.
Muddy paws, dirty shoes, and endless cleaning? Are your floors always dirty no matter how many times you clean? Now there's a simple solution. Meet Muddy Mat, the ultra-absorbent microfiber chenille mat that keeps your dog's paws so clean, it's like they're wiping them at the door. Muddy Mat is designed with thousands of advanced ultra-soft microfibers that are 5 times more absorbent than ordinary doormats.
My floors have never been so clean. I mean, both Ruby and Blue came in covered in mud, and this anti-mud mat left their paws sparkling. They step across it just once and it completely makes their paws completely clean of mud. This is the best mat I've ever found, and we have tried many. There's still a sale going on. I wouldn't wait too long before they're gone.
Call or go to trymuddymat.com or scan the QR code to claim your 70% off and your free Muddy Mat. What are you waiting for? Call or go to trymuddymat.com or scan the QR code and get your own Muddy Mat today.
Joining us is Dr. Drew from the Wellness Company with advice for dealing with seasonal colds and flu. Doctor?
Cold and flu season is here, and every year you or a loved one gets sick. Your doctor can't see you. Waiting in a crowded urgent care is brutal. This is a particularly bad cold and flu season, and it's why doctors suggest every family needs an emergency medical kit. Your medical emergency kit is filled with essential prescriptions. It includes antibiotics like generic Z-Pak to get well faster, amoxicillin for pneumonia, strep throat, ear infections, plus prescriptions for nausea and UTIs, and even ivermectin. It's easy. Just match your symptoms to the prescription in your guidebook or call the telemedicine doctor standing by. Take your medication early and feel better faster. Having a medical emergency kit is like having an urgent care in your home. No waiting to see a doctor, no lines at the pharmacy.
Smart advice. We've shared the website and discount code below to save viewers $45. Order now and your kit will be rushed to your door. Thank you, doctor.
Like a relentless weed, moderate to severe Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis symptoms can keep coming back.
Break away to what's possible with Tremfya.
The only IL-23 blocker for Crohn's and UC to offer self-administration from the start.
With symptom relief as early as 4 weeks, remission at 12 weeks, 1 year, and even 2 years.
Some had visible healing of their intestinal lining. Serious allergic reactions and increased risk of infections and liver problems may occur. Before treatment, your doctor should check you for infections and TB. Tell your doctor if you have an infection, flu-like symptoms, or if you need a vaccine. Healing is possible with Tremfya.
Backed by over 15 years of clinical research. Ask your doctor about Tremfya today.
Welcome back. Time now for news from the left. Jewish actor Ben Stiller, a movie star, evidently furious that he has been affiliated with the bombing of a regime that wants to destroy his homeland, Israel. Stiller calling out the White House after they used a clip from Tropic Thunder, which was a fantastic movie that he wrote and directed and starred in. They used that as part of a montage that they released with other movies like Gladiator, also using Top Gun Maverick, combined with real Iran strike footage. And for some reason, this angered Ben Stiller. He posted on X, "Hey, White House, please remove the Tropic Thunder clip. We never gave you permission and have no interest in being a part of your propaganda machine. War is not a movie." Yeah, okay, war is not a movie, but the anger doesn't make a lot of sense, especially for a Jewish actor. When politics supersedes not only your culture, but your survival instincts is what we're seeing here. A Jewish actor that hates the American president apparently more than the Islamic regime in Iran that chants death to America and death to Israel at the same time. Something else. Next up, Senator Adam Schiff on Bill Maher, walking right into this one.
This statement from the administration: the president had the constitutional authority to direct the use of military force because he could reasonably determine that such use of force was in the national interest. That's too vague for you?
Totally vague.
Okay, because that's from Obama about Libya.
Well, Obama made the argument initially that he could go into Syria without an authorization. I and many others pushed back on that argument.
He actually wiggled out of it pretty good because he's a slippery guy. But isn't it funny how just the instinct is always, he's got to attack, right? If he could have said anything quoting Obama and Schiff would have been fine with it. He could have said anything quoting Trump, he would have had a problem with it. When you switch those, you start to see exactly how politics works. Oh, this is supposed to be Trump. I have to hate this no matter what he says. I have to figure out a way to hate this. Pretty funny. Next up, J.B. Pritzker, the governor of Illinois, with a staged interview on the streets of Chicago. Enjoy.
Put ketchup.
Just so scared of the midterms in 30 seconds or less.
Well, Trump and MAGA Republicans are going to lose in November, and you know why? Because they're making life unaffordable for working families across the United States. They're shooting moms in the face and attacking our American cities. So they're going to pay for it at the ballot box.
Shooting moms in the face. Did you see the more expanded pictures of that video, by the way, that showed how she was blocking traffic for several minutes and driving everyone in the neighborhood insane before she then almost ran over an ICE officer and got shot in that particular instance that we're talking about in Minneapolis? Yeah. Next up, financial filings obtained by the Daily Mail suggesting Gavin Newsom's wife, Jennifer, has been paying herself and her company, Girls Club LLC, up to a third of her nonprofit's entire income every single year, pocketing over $3.7 million over the last decade. I'm sure she tells everybody she's a girl boss and she's so successful as she siphons money away from nonprofits. Jennifer Seibel Newsom, who runs the Representation Project, a charity fighting against gender stereotypes and harmful gender norms, important work, bringing in between $1 million and $1.7 million, roughly $300,000 of it going straight to her and her company, which does little else except siphon money off nonprofits, I imagine. Last month, Jennifer unloaded, I should say, on reporters for not paying attention to whatever her dumb cause du jour was and instead hitting Newsom with questions about how he's decimating his own state.
We just find it incredulous that we have Planned Parenthood here, and women are 51% of the population. And the majority of the questions, all of these questions, have really been about other issues. You wonder why we have such a horrific war on women in this country and that these guys are getting away with it, because you don't seem to care. Ask about what we're here for today, don't you think?
No, nobody cares about you or what the hell you're talking about. That's the whole point. And again, you're doing what everybody does in nonprofits, by the way, is you set up a nice, big, juicy nonprofit so you can travel for free and you can party for free, and you spend, a pretty sizable amount of the money on yourself, and almost none of it goes to the actual cause. And this is what all of those little grifters that are in Washington and our major cities are doing all the time, because they're generally pretty terrible people. And this is no different. And finally, sticking with the first couple of California, Gavin picked the wrong fight with the president in a tweet this week. Gas prices. Well, oil plummeted down into the 80s today and into this evening. And let's be honest, who is Gavin Newsom to complain about the price of gas? And even if it was $40 a barrel, by the way, for oil, it would still be unaffordable in California because Gavin Newsom makes sure that it stays that way. And then my last thing to say about this is, don't enviro freaks like Gavin Newsom want oil to be expensive and gas to be expensive so that it's used less? Isn't that exactly why they do what they do in California? They penalize you with taxes so people use less gas because they're so worried about the environment. They try to tell you to get electric cars, solar panels on your roof. Why would Gavin Newsom be complaining about expensive oil? Have you ever heard of International Women's Day? You're going to laugh up next.
Closed captioning brought to you by MagnaLife Knee Pain Relief for pain, stiffness, and inflammation of the knees.
The pain in your knees is real. Here's what real customers have to say about MagnaLife Knee Pain Relief Gel. It has worked wonders. I love it.
Available at your local retailer.
Leaf Filter is America's #1 gutter protection system because it's built right. Leaf Filter is designed to keep debris out of your gutters and water flowing. When it's built right, it shows. That's why it's Homes Approved. It's good to be #1. Always.
Schedule your free gutter inspection today. Don't kibble your dog.
Oh, hey, Dr. Marty.
Hey, Matt.
But what's wrong with this? It's premium stuff.
Let's check it out. It's still kibble, which means it's ultra-processed at extremely high temperatures that destroy the nutrients in the food. But at Dr. Marty, we gently freeze-dried premium meats, fruits, and vegetables, locking in their nutrients.
Never kibbled.
You got it, kid, and they're gonna love it.
The grind catches up with everyone, even me. That's why I trust Cunol Ultra High Absorption Turmeric to support my joint health. It's the #1 doctor-recommended form of turmeric. It helps you keep doing the things you love at every age. Cunol, the brand I trust.
Pump up the volume.
Go ahead. Crank the volume. We got you. USPS has increased daily package processing capacity by 46% in the past 5 years. And with USPS Ground Advantage, your packages stay in our secure network, dock to door, nationwide. For full visibility, near real-time tracking, affordable pricing, for peace of mind. USPS Ground Advantage.
Newsmax, you like Newsmax. I like it too. Newsmax, you like Newsmax. I like it too.
It's true. Millions of Americans agree with President Trump, and they're switching to Newsmax. They're watching great shows with Greta, Carl Higbie, Rob Schmitt, Finnerty, and more. If you're tired of big media, start watching Newsmax. It's free to start. Go to newsmaxplus.com for immediate access. Get all of President Trump's most important events live. Imagine watching Mike Huckabee's Israel Report, our Melania documentary, Clint Eastwood, Charlie Kirk specials, even the movie Jesus of Nazareth by Franco Zeffirelli. Once you start Newsmax Plus, you won't stop. So try it for free. Go to newsmaxplus.com, then download the app. It's easy. So make the switch to Newsmax Plus today.
And finally tonight, yesterday was something called International Women's Day, which is something that Americans don't really pay attention to. We don't really care about this. But in Europe and in other places around the world, it is actually a big deal. And you see it a lot in other countries. Men are expected to kind of fully cater to their wives and girlfriends or their mothers for the day. And it's kind of a nice thing. Here in the U.S., we pay more attention to Valentine's Day. That's kind of the girls' day. But here in the U.S., there were some events promoting women's rights and gender equality. Here in New York, you had all the weirdest women that you could find. It was quite a scene. The kinds of women that you imagine don't get much appreciation, showing their anger toward that. This looks like Central Park. Take a look.
And now I invite you to scream! Now, I invite you to bounce. Shake it out! Shake it out! Put your arms over your arms. Give yourself a hug. This is called havening.
So these are all the ladies that didn't have a date for International Women's Day, is what I expect. I kind of got to feel a little sorry for them, but the screaming is the best part of the whole thing. And you get a look at kind of the sad side of International Women's Day here in New York. All right, Finnerty is up next. Have a good night. We'll see you back here tomorrow.